All right, time to get existential. We're diving into Heidegger today.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, being in time.
Okay.
Specifically, we're looking at that Jones-Stambaugh translation.
Right. SUNY series?
Yes, exactly. From the SUNY series in Contemporary Continental Philosophy. I know Heidegger can be, well, a little dense,
Yeah.
but we'll break it down, make it, a little more digestible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Heidegger's not really putting forward just another philosophical theory. He's trying to get back to like the core question.
Right.
What does it mean to be?
That's the big one, isn't it?
The biggest. And he says, much of Western philosophy kind of missed the point. They got so caught up in specific beings that they didn't really confront the underlying structure of being itself.
So it's not about analyzing this table or that chair or that tree. It's about understanding just existence itself.
Yeah. It's like the difference between talking about a being,
Yeah.
right? Like a chair, a book, this, that, versus being itself. Like the condition of existence, the horizon within which all those beings exist.
Right. I see.
He even uses the example, like the word being, he points out, has different meanings. When we say the chair is being moved,
Okay.
that's different than when we say the square root of 2 is being irrational.
Okay.
Like he wants us to grapple with being as like the very thing that allows anything to exist at all.
It's like the ground of being.
Yeah.
Okay, so that distinction is crucial, but how do you even begin to approach such a just massive concept?
Well, he starts by introducing this concept of Dasein.
Dasein.
Yeah, which is often translated as being there.
Okay.
But it's not just any being. It's specifically talking about human existence.
It's us.
Us, exactly.
So Dasein is us, humans, the ones asking the questions.
Yes, exactly. Dasein is unique because it has this capacity to reflect, right? To question its own existence. And crucially, Dasein is always being in the world.
Being in the world.
Yeah, it's not some detached observer.
Right.
Its existence is fundamentally intertwined with the world around it.
So for Heidegger, there is no separating us from our environment, from our world.
Right. He wants us to understand being through how we actually engage with the world.
Yeah.
It's not some abstract philosophical concept.
Yeah.
It's right here in our daily lives.
It's lived experience. Okay. You know what? This is where it gets really interesting because he uses this great example of a hammer.
Oh, yeah.
To illustrate this idea. Can you walk us through that a bit?
Yeah. So imagine you're using a hammer, you're building something.
Right.
You're not sitting there contemplating his physical properties or his chemical composition or whatever.
No, you're just using it.
You're just using it.
Yeah.
It's what Heidegger calls ready to hand.
Ready to hand.
Completely integrated into your activity, almost an extension of yourself. And it's only when the hammer breaks, it no longer functions. That's when you suddenly become aware of it as a hammer, as a separate object with its own properties.
Right. It's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now I have to go get a new one.
Yeah. Got to go to the store.
I see what you're saying. So our understanding of being is rooted in these everyday practical interactions.
Yeah.
We don't stop and think about the being of a hammer while we're using it. We're just absorbed in the activity.
You're in the flow.
In the flow, exactly. So that points to something fundamental about Dasein's relationship to being then.
Yes.
It's not through this, abstract contemplation. It's through the practical lived engagement.
Totally.
Okay. So we've got Dasein, this being who questions being and who's always being in the world. But where does time fit into all this?
Oh, time is absolutely central to Heidegger's understanding of being.
Okay.
He argues that time isn't just this linear sequence of moments ticking by, but it's the horizon within which Dasein exists and understands itself.
Okay.
It's a framework through which we experience the world, we project ourselves into the future, and we understand our own finitude.
So time isn't just something that happens to us. It's fundamental to who we are as Dasein.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is where he introduces one of his most, I think, powerful and maybe unsettling concepts. Being towards death.
Being towards death. All right, now we're getting serious. What does he mean by that?
Well, Heidegger argues that Dasein is always oriented towards its own finitude, toward its own death.
Right.
But he doesn't mean this in a morbid way or depressing way. Instead, he sees this awareness of our own mortality as something that can actually be quite liberating, something that pushes us towards authenticity.
Authenticity. Okay, now there's a word. There's a concept.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a bit? how does being towards death lead to an authentic existence? So you're saying knowing we're going to die, like that can actually help us live better.
Well, yeah, for Heidegger, authenticity is about that, confronting our own, limits, our being towards death. It's about choosing to live a life that's really our own, not just what society tells us to do.
It's like taking ownership, even though, we know it's going to end.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where this other big concept comes in, the they.
The they.
Yeah, Heidegger says a lot of our inauthentic existence is kind of driven by this they.
Okay.
These forces, social norms, expectations, all that.
So like that pressure to fit in.
Exactly. It's like the voice of the crowd, right?
Yeah.
Telling us what to wear, what to buy, even what to think.
What to think, how to live. And if we just give into that, we don't really deal with the big questions about who we are.
Yeah, you just end up living a life that's not really your own.
So it's like we're letting they make our choices for us instead of really, choosing for ourselves.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting because Heidegger argues that Dasein, this being who can question its own being, is the key to understanding being itself.
Wait, hold on. How does understanding ourselves help us unlock the mystery of being in general?
It all comes down to that relationship between Dasein and time. Heidegger says our understanding of being is fundamentally temporal. He even says temporality is the meaning of the being of Dasein. It's through Dasein's experience of time, understanding its own, limits, that being is revealed.
So our existence as beings in time, that's how being shows itself to us.
Precisely. Heidegger's saying being doesn't just exist out there objectively. It's disclosed, revealed through Dasein's temporal existence.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it, but can you give me a more concrete example?
Sure. Think about planning a vacation. Right? You're not just in the present moment. You're projecting yourself into the future, imagining those possibilities, making choices based on what you think will happen.
Yeah, using my past experiences to decide on the future.
Exactly. You're drawing on that past, your understanding of yourself to make decisions about the future.
And even when I think back on a past trip like I'm doing it now, those memories, they shape how I see myself, my place in the world. Past, present, future, all kind of mixed up.
Right. Heidegger says we need to understand time as this horizon within which Dasein exists and projects itself. And it's through that temporal structure that Dasein discloses being.
Mind blown. This whole thing about temporality and being, it's still a bit abstract, though. How does it actually, play out in our lives?
Well, one way to think about it is through that concept of authenticity we were talking about. Remember, for Heidegger, authenticity involves confronting our own finitude, choosing to live a life that's true to ourselves.
Right.
And that choice, it's always happening in time.
So every decision we make, big or small, it's a choice between, being authentic or inauthentic.
In a way, yeah. Every moment is an opportunity for Dasein to either seize its own possibilities or to succumb to they and live a life dictated by others.
Okay, so how do we know if we're making the authentic choice? Heidegger talks about that call of conscience, but how does that actually work?
Well, remember, for Heidegger, the call of conscience isn't some external, moral authority. It's not a set of rules.
Oh.
It's not about somebody telling you what's right or wrong. It's this call that emerges from Dasein's own potentiality for being, urging it to break free from the they and really confront its own existence.
So like an inner voice, but it's not about some set of moral principles. It's about living true to yourself.
Exactly. It's a summons to authenticity,
Yeah.
To step into our own possibilities and live a life that aligns with who we are. And you know what? A lot of times that call comes up when we're anxious.
Anxiety.
Yeah, when we're faced with the fact that our being has no real ground. When we realize that we're responsible for creating meaning in our lives, that's when that call can be the loudest.
So anxiety can be a good thing. It can kind of wake us up to that need for authenticity.
Exactly. Heidegger sees anxiety as a revealing mood. It can be unsettling for sure, but it can also be a really powerful catalyst for, self-discovery and authentic living. It wakes us up to the fact that we're free to choose who we want to be, even though, we're finite.
This is a lot to process. I think I need a minute to just sit with that. All right, I think I'm ready to keep going. This is a lot. We've covered so much. Being Dasein, temporality, authenticity, the anxiety, the call of conscience. It's a lot to wrap your head around. Even for someone who's familiar with existentialism.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's even crazier is that Heidegger only actually published part 1 of Being in Time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he planned a second part,
Okay.
but he never finished it.
I kind of see why this deep dive alone has been like a workout for my brain.
Yeah.
But it's really thought-provoking. Heidegger really forces you to, confront those big questions about existence, what's the meaning of life, all that.
Yeah, and I think that's the real power of his work. It's not just about, understanding these concepts like in a detached academic way.
Right.
It's about understanding ourselves and our place in the world.
Absolutely. One thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of the worldhood of the world. This idea that the world isn't just a bunch of objects, but like a meaningful whole that's disclosed to us through our, being in the world.
That's such a profound idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really challenging that traditional view of the world as something out there.
Separate from us.
Right. Instead, he says we're actively involved in shaping the world through our understanding, our actions, our interpretations.
So like it's a two-way street.
Exactly.
Our understanding shapes our being, and our being shapes our understanding.
Yeah, and that has such huge implications for how we think about everything, our relationship with technology, the choices we make.
It means we're not just passive, just receiving the world. You're active participants.
You're creating it.
We're creating it.
Yeah.
That's a powerful idea.
It is.
It really highlights, how important our individual perspective is, like how our own way of being in the world shapes the world we actually experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why even though he never finished Being in Time, Heidegger kept exploring these themes throughout his work. Developing concepts like, care, thrownness, being with.
Right.
All these ideas emphasize like the connectedness of our existence, how we're always engaged in a world with others.
It sounds like Heidegger's work is really just the beginning
Yeah.
of a much bigger exploration. What does it mean to be human? It's a journey, not a destination.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes philosophy so exciting. It's not about finding the right answer.
Right.
It's about constantly questioning, exploring, deepening our understanding.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today with this deep dive into Heidegger's Being and Time.
We have.
It's definitely sparked a lot of new thoughts for me.
It's a text you can come back to again and again.
Yeah.
Each time you find something new, I think.
Yeah.
What stands out to you in the text is just as important as any expert's interpretation.
That's a great reminder. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been quite a journey.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, I hope this deep dive has inspired you to, keep exploring Heidegger's work, keep wrestling with those existential questions. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep being an